Greetings YouTube, and welcome back to my sketchbook. Here we have a steel version of an Aztec or Mayan macana. So this is all metal. It actually has a chisel grind, so it's flat on one side and round on the other. And it's a sword, and it's designed to emulate an earlier stone weapon. And the idea here is what happens if the Aztec or Mayan culture survives as a functioning culture, and they eventually get advanced metallurgy, and then they make weapons that harken back to their older age, but are made with modern materials. So it's kind of a ceremonial thing. Obviously, I can't imagine they wouldn't also have things like machetes and swords. Here we have a throwing star. I made an entire series of them, which I'll be getting to eventually. From 2 points, I believe I went all the way up to 8 or 9. I can't remember how many points I did. But this was all an exercise in figuring out angles and figuring out the distance between the points and making sure everything came out the way I wanted it to, and making it look like you could actually throw it and do some harm. So this is one of my designs, and it's kind of a classic, a 6-point star. Here we have another battle staff, and this again is arrow themed. I have a couple of them in my collection, and this one has more of a frog crotch arrow design here in the end, but a distinctly arrowed head at the other. And again, a battle staff is, I define that word as a two-ended weapon that has two dissimilar ends. Here we have a classic banded great club. I wanted a simple design. I just wanted to say, okay, this is what a great club, your average great club looks like. Here it is. So I just kind of like that simplicity. Here we have another geometric battle staff. This one has a square or diamond shape, and the other end has a triangle. So I was playing with geometric shapes, but while still creating something which I think could have been an effective double-ended weapon. Here we have a knife based off of a knuckle duster. So this is a classic knuckle duster setup, and then there's a blade up here, and kind of inspired by the trench knives of World War I, and just a fantasy version thereof. Here we have a blade inspired by both an arrow and by a trowel. So I could see this having evolved out of dwarven tools, and maybe this is the kind of thing that a dwarven monk carries as their piercing weapon, as opposed to like the Singyam. Is it Singan? That is in the 3.5 rules for a monk. I think that monk weapon should be categorized as blunt, piercing, and slashing, and the stats should be all the same, and then the flavor should be applied by whatever style that they are practicing. So this to me would be a great weapon for a dwarven monk to carry. Here we have a decidedly science fiction style sword. This is way too big down here. This is kind of silly, but the rest of it functions as almost like a rapier, and it's got that kind of science fiction-y vibe to it. I kind of like this whole angular vibe going there. It made me think of something that you might see in a 1970s era illustration for science fiction. Here we have a throwing steel which folds. Now this is what it looks like in the folded position when it's all folded up, and when it opens up, it locks in place and then can be thrown. Obviously, the two faces that face each other are flat, and this would be on the other side. So the bevel would be on the other side, so with the chisel grind on this particular weapon. And I think this would be good. Sort of inspired by the folding weapon from the movie Beastmaster. I like the idea of a folding weapon, and you could probably still use this as a weapon folded up, putting your finger through there, and you could still stab with it, I think, or slash with it. So it has double utility. Here we have a sword, in which is could be considered a great sword. It could be maybe considered even a naginata, which I think is a nice design. It's got some ornamentation to it, but it's not too over the top. I would definitely just use great sword stats for this probably, and I think it would be interesting. Say it's a cultural thing. Here we have another throwing steel, and again, this is all about angles and points. So I'm trying to take a chakram into a different design era, or area, I should say. And I kind of like the way this one came out. I think it looks nice. And the points, I think, I like the way I executed the points on that. Here we go with a eyeball themed axe. I wanted to say, like, what can I do with that shape? That's a cool shape. What can I do with it? And what I did with it was create this. So again, this could be a cultural thing or a cult thing, an ornamental axe kind of thing. But I like the design. I think it was quite intriguing. Here we have a hand blade, which is all about the cutting. And I think I made it too big. I think that this needed to come in so that this was much closer to here, and that would make this shorter, and I think it would have been more sensible. I think it still might work, but I think it would have looked better proportion-wise if I'd made it a little bit on the more compact size. Here we have a bladed military fork with a spike down here, so if anything gets in there, it could be damaged. They had a limb, and it also used to help maybe twist and trap an opponent's weapon if you so choose. Now this is a weird one. I think this was inspired by like a folding chair or something, but the idea was to design something that is completely and utterly out of the ordinary, something I had never ever seen in my entire life in any other weapons. So this is how you grip the weapon. It's got edges here, here, and points, and it's got two large diamond-shaped impacts here, so you could actually use this in different directions. And the advantage of this weapon in combat is that your opponent isn't going to have a clue what you're going to do with this thing. So yes, that advantage is going to go away quickly because they're going to figure out what you're doing once you start doing it. But initially, this could really throw somebody for a loop. And this is kind of playing off the idea that, especially in Chinese martial arts, you would have design and counter design, and design and counter design as different schools came up with different methods of weapons and martial art moves to specifically counter those of another school. So this is that kind of theme here. I don't even remember what I called it. It's on my DeviantArt page somewhere. And here we have a double-bitted axe, and this is all metal, playing with spirals here again. Not too bad. I kind of like these. I think the proportions are too big. I should have made the whole thing a little smaller. Made me think vaguely of something you might find in India. Here we have a sword, which is very silly because this is actually supposed to be a solid ring with hollow in the middle, and that weld right there is going to fail miserably. You know, but like I said, it's an interesting idea, and you'd probably see something like that in a fantasy comic or something that would make sense. Now here you have a kind of a very angular chopping knife or camp knife or even a light machete. It's all about utility with this. This is not designed as a weapon. It's designed as a tool, and I just thought it was a nice design. Some things I designed specifically so that I could actually think, hey, someone could actually use this. I'm not sure what I was trying to achieve with this. I didn't get there. I looked at this last night when I was talking to my wife while she was having dinner, and I'm like, wow, I did not succeed with this design. So I'm not sure what I was trying to achieve, but I don't think I got there. Here we have another Dwarven style weapon. And again, maybe this is part of the Dwarven martial arts, all about slashing, inspired by a spade, obviously, all wood, leather-wrapped handle, and all about slashing things. And again, it's got a very chunky design because that's what I always imagined dwarves having. Now here we have, this is inspired by a Multipoint Club that I had done on an earlier video, which was based off an actual Pacific Northwest Native American design. So I took this to an all-steel design, and I made a 4-point battle axe, essentially. But just imagine something shoved in here like a limb or something. That is just going to slice through that like nobody's business. This thing just makes me think that it's going to be very dangerous. I liked it, I really did, and I think it would be quite interesting to see one in action. Here we go with a set of polearms I made all in the same day intentionally. So here you have exactly the same length, slightly different designs in here as far as the shafts are concerned and how I have them wrapped and how I have them attached. But here we have a heavy spear, we have a naginata, I'm blanking. Naginata. And then we have a glaive. And I really like that. Have I been saying naginata and nagamaki? I can't remember. Maybe. I'm human. I make mistakes. But I really liked this selection to show how you could have different themes. Like this to me looks Dwarven, this is obviously Japanese, and this looks European, but they're all very similar, and these are identical in use. They look a little different, but that's exactly how they were used. They were used the same way, and I like that. So I was really quite happy with the way these three sketches worked out.